Hey. Yeah?
Rooster Teeth is a company that, despite their major flaws in recent years, their impact on the history of the internet and its culture can never be denied.
You ever wonder why we're here? It's one of life's great mysteries, isn't it?
And here we are now at the finish line of their run with Red vs. Blue Restoration, the final entry in the Red vs. Blue franchise, and the final work of the media and entertainment production company Rooster Teeth. If you're unfamiliar with Rooster Teeth, I don't even understand how, because it's been impossible in recent years to avoid this.
Wait, that's illegal. That's illegal.
Where you been, Trick?
Why would I
Where
do
you
that?
been back
You're
there?
not giving it to me.
And where you
Give
been
it to me
quite
faster.
And this.
You ever wonder why we're here? Are we the product of one of life's
You ever
great
wonder why
mysteries?
we're here?
You
Why
ever wonder why we're here?
I wonder why we're here.
One of life's great mysteries, isn't it?
Yeah.
What all this stuff about God? No.
It's a good defense!
Since its release, and I mean super since its release, very since its release, God knows when this video is going to be made. And I'm not going to make this complicated, I just wanted to say, like, basically, you know, I don't think they could have ended this any better. Just to give on a little bit of background, for anyone who is unfamiliar with Rooster Teeth and their legacy, their, yeah, it's not the best legacy, especially in their final years, but it's a legacy. Look, I really loved Rooster Teeth in their peak years. Okay, maybe I wasn't there in their peak years, yeah, but I still appreciated what their peak years were and what they did. I was a really big fan of Rooster Teeth, and despite everything that happened, everything that went wrong, and yeah, a lot did go wrong. Even if by the time the company came to an end, we all saw this, I saw this just like everyone else, I saw this coming from a mile away, 5 miles away, 5 years away for sure. Even when one of the company's founders and the CEO quit on them and went a separate way, even when so many other influential members of the company started going their separate ways, when it was announced that Restoration would be the final season of Red vs. Blue, and just a few weeks later when it was announced it would be the final project of Rooster Teeth overall, just like many other fans, I came back and, you know, I went in, at this point, I went in with some pretty low expectations, and was just expecting like some sort of cheesy goodbye letter, you know, thanks for everything, you know, and all that. But lo and behold, they really defied my expectations, to be honest. Not only was this film actually pretty well executed, but it was so much more meaningful than just a goodbye letter and just a dump of so much nostalgia on our faces for one last go.
Good. I like helping my own team.
So as it turns out, Epsilon is alive. Epsilon has returned, though not as himself, only as a series of pre-recorded responses that were made after Epsilon spent an unbelievable amount of time in AI time at least, constructing and running various simulations in order to best prepare the Reds and Blues for whatever they would encounter after Chorus, which would end up being the fragments he created possessing Tucker while he was still in the Meta's armor. I don't want to recap what happened in the movie because I genuinely want anyone and everyone, especially everyone who was a die-hard fan of Red vs. Blue and Rooster Teeth as I was, see for yourself how they delivered such a more meaningful message than just a goodbye. Once I was done with the movie, I started really thinking, it got me really thinking back to all the other big finales that I've ever watched. You know, when you think of a finale, when I think of a finale of a big franchise, big movie, big show or whatever, you know, it's usually, they try to go all out with it, you know? There's tons of callbacks, there's tons of character reprisals, there's tons of callbacks, references. They bring everything back that you've come to love from the series, and it really does turn into this gigantic nostalgia fest that kind of by the end feels a little bit, not that there's anything wrong with celebrating the past, but I never realized how bitter it can be afterwards when all is said and done. And I don't think it's the kind of message that Bernie, Matt, and the others wanted to give us for their final go in this legacy, that this amazing thing that they built together over the years, over 21 years. Of course, Red vs. Blue Restoration isn't without its fair share of references and callbacks, you know, from the big things to the small things. They bring back the Meta. Meta is back as the final villain, and he's possessed by Church's recreations of the Alpha Fragments. They're back, and Sheila's back. You know, heck, Tex. Okay, I'm done spoiling it. But the difference, what sets the way they use references and nostalgia, apart from how I'm used to seeing it in other franchises now, is that it has a whole different mood to it. It's a lot less celebratory and a lot more kind of, I don't know what word to use aside from accepting. There's a lot of scenes in Red vs. Blue Restoration that are really centered around the fact that things are different now and they ain't ever gonna be the same, and that there's no going back. It really starts off as how I would actually expect it to start off. Really grim, really kind of sad and depressing. You know, the good times are over, and that's kind of the vibe I get from other franchises too. All this focus on the past and all the greatness, all the good stuff that can't be recreated. It's kind of like they're saying, you know, the good days are over, we're gonna enjoy them all we can, and we're gonna really miss them when we're gone. And again, not that it's a bad thing to celebrate the past like that, but, you know, Red vs. Blue Restoration, even though it starts off with a similar tone and theme, at some point, it suddenly turns into a whole different message that I can only interpret as the good times may be over for us, for here, but they're not over for you. There's just nothing for you here, and judging from fandom reactions and interpretations, I'm glad to see that I think I'm not the only one who interpreted it this way. One of my favorite scenes is when Simmons, Griff, and Caboose make it back to Blood Gulch, where this series of recordings left by Church, Message Church leads Caboose to another memory unit. And later that night, after some good pleading, while they're expecting the meta to confront them the next day, Caboose convinces Griff and Simmons to sit with him, or stand with him, by the campfire, and help him remember all of the adventures that they've been through so that he can fill up the memory unit and potentially recreate a new Church. And what starts off as the three trying to retrace their steps and the events of Church's life quickly turns into an honestly heartfelt montage of the three happily recounting all the adventures and experiences they've had over the years and all the growth that they've been through together. This scene was just, I can't even begin to imagine how many people these days would just do anything to have an experience like this with their old friends, and to those lucky enough, would do anything to be able to do it again. Just as much as there's a bunch of callbacks and references to old episodes and old gags and the past arcs of the show, there's also a lot of dialogue and scenes that just have this strong focus on the concept of moving on. And after watching it, when I took a look back at the show in its entirety, I realized that moving on has kind of been a core concept, a core message, a core theme of this entire show from the start. How many times has the message, memory is the key, been repeated to us?
Well, you know what Delta always said, right? Memory is the key. If I don't come back, then you're in charge of remembering me, okay? From
the Blood Gulch Chronicles, the Church's struggle to let go of Tex has been an arc-defining endeavor. And this would continue into the Freelancer arc, which would turn memory is the key into almost a slogan or a motto of the show entirely.
Gamma was its deceit, Sigma was its creativity, and Epsilon was its memories, and memory is the key.
I didn't realize that until I saw this movie, because on the back of showing us a lot of stuff that we loved from the show's past, it felt like it kept making attempts to remind us that no matter how much we want to, there's just no going back. And I believe this strongly because it seems like even the show's creators, even the company's creators themselves have believed it. Like, it's no doubt that Bernie coming back to write and star as Church and Matt becoming the director again for this final season was definitely an attempt to have a genuinely passionate final word in the closing of Rooster Teeth. Oh, also, before I forget, I just want to say real quick that I think Michael Malconian did an amazing job as Caboose. I mean, not as amazing as Joel. It's a shame that it couldn't come by. There's no one who could ever do something like do.
Proximity is the key. I thought memory was the key. Oh, yeah, and the sword. Sword is the key too. Caboose, shut up. I gotta go. We'll talk later. We should probably get a key ring.
There's no one that could ever do Caboose like he did. He is Caboose.
AI! What does the A stand for?
Artificial.
Right. What does the I stand for? Intelligence. Oh,
But Michael really did an amazing job. I don't know what it was, but his voice just really fit Caboose in this final entry.
Once upon a time, there was a man and a woman, and they had a little baby. And the man was very smart and made lots of things. And the woman, she was fierce and tough. Anyway, there was a big war one day, and the woman had to go fight. And she did. She left. And she didn't say goodbye because she didn't like saying that. And then she died. And the man was sad, and the baby was sad. So the man decided to make a special computer program, and that program would make sure that no more soldiers would die, and no more people or babies would be sad. But the man's program had all of his memories. And it remembered the woman. And the memories were too much for him, so it made a whole new program based on those memories. And she was also tough, and she fought. And she kept dying. And the program decided the only way to not be sad was to delete the memories of the woman, and he did. And he thought she was gone forever. But that's the thing about a memory. You don't get to own it. It lives on, even after you die, and it goes from person to person. And they can tell it to each other through all of time. And they can laugh, or they can cry, or they can do both. Because people may come and go.
Not even a decent fight.
But memories are what we leave.
Looking behind the scenes, they really had a good time making Restoration. There was a little bit of crying in that one stream, but throughout the production of Red vs. Blue Restoration, it really gives the vibes of, it really gives the vibes of that one quote. Don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened. Especially because they really don't have much to look forward to with this company. Since Red vs. Blue Restoration has been released, and since Rooster Teeth has shut down, most of the cast members have had somewhat of an easy time moving on to future projects. It's another thing that I see reflected in the movie itself. Just as much as there's callbacks to old locations, old arcs, and stuff in Red vs. Blue's past, there's also this undeniable feeling of emptiness throughout the whole movie. There's not a lot of characters. The movie itself is already pretty short, just barely under an hour and a half long. And not even the whole Blood Gulch crew is here throughout the entire duration. Some of the returning characters are only there in the beginning or the end.
Shit.
There's not a lot of time to appreciate it, which no doubt is partially due to budgeting. But at the same time, I genuinely appreciate this. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but it really feels like there's a message to tell in the feel of this movie.
What do you mean blues plural? Isn't there only one left?
Watching this movie really gives me the vibe of walking through your old high school after graduation during the summer months. You're so used to coming here, you're walking through these hallways in these classrooms, you've grown accustomed to friends and familiar faces and happy times and conversations. But now that you're here, the hallways are empty, the classrooms are empty, the lights are all dim, and you just feel this emptiness. You're trying so hard to recreate what you once had until a janitor or one of your old teachers comes over and just reminds you that there's nothing for you here anymore. And you just gotta move on. That's the vibe that I get from watching this movie. And although it feels sad at first, it's really a bittersweet thing. And maybe even beneficial. Nostalgia can be a comforting thing to have, but at the same time, after watching this movie, I realize it can be kind of poisonous to be stuck in the past like that. And I see it glorified in so much media today. Glorification and prioritization of the past in so many areas of mainstream media today in this day and age, that I guess it just feels like such a breath of fresh air to have a piece of work that knows this isn't something good to hold on to anymore. That the writers of Rooster Teeth know that this company is well past its prime, and the best thing to do besides having a tough fixation on it and its past is to just move on and find something else. And maybe in a twisted way it was kind of a good thing that they reached such a rocky conclusion so that, at least for us, we would have an easier time moving on. I see people speculating a lot that maybe there's some way that their old works can keep going, like Ruby or Red vs. Blue could someday be revived. Maybe the company itself could somehow come back and reach the height that it once sat at. But as for me, Red vs. Blue will definitely always be, to me, one of the best shows ever. Of all time. And at this point, and a lot thanks to this movie, whether they come back or not doesn't really much matter. Because it's enough to remember that it was good while it lasted. And as an old bald British dude once said, all good things must come to an end.